The grand chamber of the High Synod was not merely a room. It was a cavernous testament to the endurance of the Zalophian hegemony, a structure hewn from the living obsidian of their homeworld's mantle, suspended in the gravimetric embrace of their capital station, the Eye of Eternity. The air here was thick, recycled through filtration systems that had been scrubbing the atmosphere for 3,000 years, carrying the scent of ozone, polished chitin, and the crushing weight of bureaucratic fear. Shadows clung to the vaulted ceilings like cobwebs of darkness, hiding the intricate carvings that detailed the hegemony's rise from the primordial sludge to the masters of the 12 sectors. In the center of the chamber, a holographic dais hummed with a low, mournful resonance, projecting a star chart that spanned light years, a glittering dusting of diamond light against the void of the room. Around it, the High Synod sat upon their elevated thrones, their carapaces gleaming under the harsh, cold light of the luminarium orbs, their multifaceted eyes twitching with a mixture of agitation and deeply suppressed dread that rippled through their psionic connective tissue like a virus. High Counselor Vrax, his shell scarred by the jagged etchings of rank and age, leaned forward, his mandibles clicking in a rhythm that betrayed his lack of composure, a rare display for a being who had negotiated peace treaties with the silicon-devouring swarms of the Outer Rim. He stared at the red sector blinking on the map, a region of space known as the Tartarus Expanse, a graveyard of physics where the fabric of reality thinned and tore under the stress of gravitational anomalies that defied the neat, orderly equations of Zalophian science. The expanse was forbidden, a region marked with the warning glyphs of 1,000 dead species, a place where ships went to die and where signals were swallowed by an unending silence. Yet the sensors of the perimeter fleet, sensors sensitive enough to detect the heartbeat of a prey beast on a moon 3 systems away, were screaming. They were not detecting background radiation or the random fluctuations of a collapsing star. They were detecting a signature, a structured, rhythmic pulse that spoke of intelligence, of engineering, and of a defiance of the natural order that chilled Vrax's blood to the temperature of deep space. "It is impossible," Vrax murmured, his voice a grinding rasp that echoed in the silence of the chamber, amplified by the acoustics of the obsidian walls. "The readings must be in error, a sensor ghost, a reflection of a pulsar echoing off a gas cloud. We categorized that vessel as destroyed 20 cycles ago. We saw the telemetry, we saw the hull integrity fail, we saw the screaming cease." The humans took their primitive, fire-spitting engine and drove it straight into the heart of a gravimetric shear that would have torn a moon apart. There is no survival in the Tartarus. There is only dust and math. To his right, Sub-Minister Kale, a younger, more fluid thinker whose carapace still held the iridescent sheen of a recent molt, tapped a manipulator claw against his console, bringing up a stream of data that flowed like a waterfall of light. "The math, High Counselor, is precisely the problem," Kale countered, his tone respectful but laced with the terrifying thrill of the unknown. "The math suggests that the object is not merely resisting the shear, it is ignoring it. The gravitational waves are bending around the object. The radiation belts are parting like water before a solid stone. And the identification code. It is archaic, yes. It is primitive, yes. But it is verified. The cryptographic keys match the archives from the brief, chaotic diplomatic window we had with the Terra Federation before their disappearance. It is the *UN's Prometheus *, the ship that vanished, the ship that carried the experimental drive that we warned them repeatedly would destabilize their local reality. A murmur ran through the assembled synod, a sound like dry leaves skittering over stone. The humans. The memory of them was a distasteful one, a brief flicker in the long, slow history of the hegemony. They had appeared on the galactic stage with the subtle grace of a supernova, loud, bright, burning through resources with a reckless abandon that horrified the conservationist sensibilities of the Zalophian people. Humans were short-lived, frantic creatures, obsessed with expansion, obsessed with pushing boundaries, treating the laws of physics not as immutable walls but as challenges to be overcome with brute force and stubbornness. They had built the Prometheus against the advice of the Galactic Council, strapping an engine that harvested vacuum energy, a theoretical impossibility, to a hull made of simple alloys. They had launched it into the expanse to prove a point, to show the galaxy that they belonged among the stars. And then they had vanished, instantly, silently, serving as a gry. Cautionary tale that the Synod used to instruct young engineers on the dangers of hubris. "If it is the Prometheus *, Vrax said, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble, "then it is a ghost, a derelict, a tomb drifting out of the dark, But ghosts do not emit power signatures that rival a main sequence star. Ghosts do not hail the perimeter fleet on a wideband frequency with clear, uncorrupted audio. What are they saying, Kale? If it is a distress call, we are obligated by the Treaty of Cinders to answer, though I loathe the expenditure of fuel for a corpse wagon. Kale hesitated, his manipulators freezing over the controls. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. When he looked up, his compound eyes were wide, the pupils dilated in a way that signaled profound confusion. It is not a distress call, High Counselor. It is a request for docking clearance, and they are asking for the coordinates of the Great Barrier. They say they have brought something back. They say they have confirmed the theory of inversion. They sound calm. They sound like they are not aware that 20 years have passed, or perhaps they are aware and they simply do not care. The atmosphere in the chamber shifted from confusion to a sharp, metallic fear. The theory of inversion was a heresy, a scientific blasphemy that suggested entropy could be reversed, that energy could be reclaimed from the heat death of the universe. It was the fever dream of madmen, the kind of science that led to the collapse of stars and the unraveling of sectors. If the humans had tinkered with such forces, if they had survived the expanse by breaking the fundamental rules of existence, they were no longer a tragedy. They were a threat greater than the silicon swarms, greater than the void predators. They were a contagion of chaos returning to a galaxy of order. Mobilize the Third Fleet, Vrax ordered, rising from his throne, his shadow stretching long and distorted across the floor. Do not engage, but lock weapons. Raise the planetary shields of the nearest outpost. If this ship carries unstable technology, if it is leaking anti-reality or carrying a payload of exotic matter, we cannot allow it to contaminate the trade routes. We will meet them. I will meet them. But we will do so with the barrel of a railgun pointed at their engine core. Humans are unpredictable. If they have been in the dark for 20 years, they may be insane. They may be monsters. The rendezvous point was deep in the neutral zone, a sector of dead space far from the inhabited worlds, chosen for its isolation. The hegemony's Third Fleet arrived in a display of overwhelming force, a grand procession of dreadnoughts and cruisers, their hulls sleek and organic, grown from biocrystalline matrices that shimmered with defensive energy fields. They formed a sphere, a cage of weapons and sensors, creating a killbox kilometers wide. In the center of this cage, the anomaly sat. It was the asterisk Un's Prometheus, and yet it was not. Vrax stood on the bridge of the flagship, Eternal Vigilance Asterisk, staring out the viewport at the human vessel. The tactical displays were washing the bridge in crimson light, flashing warnings that the ship's computers could not process. The human ship retained the basic silhouette of its original design, a blocky, utilitarian frame of titanium and ceramic composite, engines mounted on pylons, a rotating habitat ring. But the materials had changed. The hull was no longer gray metal. It was a deep, absorbing matte black, a darkness so profound it seemed to drink the light of the distant stars. And running through this blackness were veins of gold, pulsing with a rhythmic light that looked less like energy and more like liquid time. The ship did not look built. It looked forged in a fire that burned colder than absolute zero. Parts of the hull seemed to flicker, phasing in and out of visual existence, as if the ship was only partially anchored in the current dimension. "Report," Vrax barked, his claws digging into the railing of the command deck. "What am I looking at? Why are the sensors reading the ship's mass as infinite one moment and zero the next?" Science officer, a fragile-looking Zalophian with enlarged cranial lobes, looked up from his station, trembling. "High Counselor, the vessel. It is saturated with chronometric particles. The hull plating is an alloy we cannot identify, but the molecular bond is impossibly dense. It is as if the atoms have been fused without the space between electrons. It shouldn't hold together. By all laws of strong and weak nuclear force, that ship should be a cloud of quark-gluon plasma, but it is stable. And the energy output, it's not fusion, it's not antimatter. The core is drawing energy from a localized rupture in space-time. They're carrying a singularity, Counselor. A naked singularity stabilized within a magnetic bottle of a design I cannot comprehend. A singularity, a black hole, the hum. And had strapped a black hole to their ship and were using it as a battery. The sheer madness of it made Vrax's head swim. This was the technology that shouldn't survive. To harness a singularity required the energy output of a Dyson sphere to start and the precision of a god to maintain. If containment failed, the Prometheus wouldn't just explode. It would swallow the entire Third Fleet and half the solar system. "Open a channel," Vrax commanded, forcing his voice to remain steady. "Audio and visual. I want to see the face of the creature that commands that abomination." The main screen flickered, static washing over the image. Not electronic static, but a visual distortion caused by gravitational lensing. Then the image stabilized. The bridge of the asterisk Prometheus was revealed. It was Spartan functional, illuminated by the soft, golden glow of the strange veins running through the walls. The crew moving in the background were efficient, silent, wearing uniforms that looked like woven darkness. And in the center sat the captain. He was a human male, identifiable by the bipedal symmetry and the soft, unarmored skin. But he did not look like the humans Vrax remembered. The frantic energy, the nervous twitching, the aggression born of fragility, it was all gone. The man sat with a stillness that rivaled the stones of the High Synod. His hair was white, not with age, but with a stark, blinding purity like the corona of a star. His eyes were the most unsettling feature. They were solid, shifting nebulas of gray, devoid of iris or pupil, yet focused with terrifying intensity. "This is Captain Elias Thorne of the Asterisk Uns Prometheus Asterisk," the human spoke. His voice was soft, resonant, carrying a weight that vibrated in the chest cavities of the Zalophian crew. It did not sound like it came through a speaker. It sounded like it was originating from inside their own minds. "We greet the hegemony. We apologize for the disturbance in your sensor grid. Re-entry into linear time is turbulent." Vrax straightened, puffing out his chest plates to maximize his silhouette, a gesture of dominance. "Captain Thorne, you are far from home and far from your time. You were presumed dead. Your vessel is emitting energy signatures that violate Class 1 safety protocols. You are carrying a singularity. This is an act of war by the standards of any civilized species. Explain yourself, or we will be forced to neutralize your vessel to protect the stability of this sector." On the screen, Thorne did not flinch. He did not look angry. He did not look fearful. He looked patient, like a parent explaining fire to a child. A faint, sad smile touched his lips. "It is not a weapon, High Counselor," Thorne said gently. "And we are not here to fight. We are here to deliver a message and a gift. We went into the expanse, yes. We thought we were explorers. We were arrogant. The gravity shear caught us, pulled us down into the crushing dark. We should have died. By our science, we did die. The pressure collapsed the bulkheads. The radiation boiled the coolant." "Then how are you here?" Vrax demanded. "How does your ship defy the laws of physics?" "Because the laws of physics are local ordinances, Counselor. They apply here in the light. Down there in the dark, in the crushing silence of the void, the rules change. We didn't survive by fighting the pressure. We survived by becoming part of it. We found something, or it found us. We learned that entropy is not a one-way street. It is a cycle. What you call destruction, the universe calls recycling. We have brought back the technology of regenesis." Thorne gestured, and the camera panned to a device sitting on a pedestal near his command chair. It was a simple geometric shape, a dodecahedron made of the same black and gold material, rotating slowly in midair. "This is an entropy sink," Thorne explained. "It draws the chaotic, wasted energy of a system, heat, radiation, decay, and inverts it. It turns death back into life. It turns rust back into iron. It turns a dying star back into a burning sun. We survived because we learned to eat the decay that was trying to kill us." The silence on the asterisk eternal vigilance was absolute. The scientists were gaping. The military officers were frozen. This was the holy grail of existence. Infinite energy, immortality, the ability to reverse the aging of a star to prevent the end of the universe. It was the power of gods. "And why?" Vrax whispered, his voice trembling with a greed he could not suppress. "Would you bring this to us? Humans are selfish. Humans are hoarders. You possess the key to eternity, and you fly it straight to the gates of an empire that despised you." Thorne's expression shifted. The sadness deepened, eclipsing the patience. He leaned forward, and for a moment the gray nebulas of his eyes seemed to swirl with a terrible memory. "Because we didn't just find technology in the dark, Counselor," Thorne said, his voice drow, peeping to a whisper that roared over the comms. "We found out why the expanse exists. We found out why the galaxy is quiet. We found out what is watching us from the spaces between the stars." The lights on the hegemony bridge flickered. The golden veins on the asterisk Prometheus pulsed brighter. "We brought the tech back because you're going to need it," Thorne continued. "We didn't come back to conquer you. We came back to arm you because the silence isn't empty. It's hungry, and it's waking up." The transition from the standoff to the diplomatic summit was a blur of high-stakes logistics that strained the hegemony's bureaucracy to its breaking point. The Prometheus was granted clearance to dock at the asterisk spire of Discourse Asterisk, a neutral station usually reserved for ending wars, not starting new eras. The arrival of the human delegation was broadcast to the entire hegemony, a spectacle that stopped industry on a dozen worlds. When the airlock cycled open, the atmosphere in the docking bay was electric. A regiment of hegemony honor guards, armored in ceremonial carapace plate and holding energized halberds, stood in rigid formation. Vrax stood at the head of the delegation, flanked by the high scientists and the ministers of defense. They expected a military squad. They expected scientists in lab coats. What walked out of the asterisk Prometheus was a procession of monks. They wore robes of the same light-absorbing material as their ship's hull. They moved with a synchronized grace, their footsteps silent on the metal deck. There were no weapons visible, no sidearms, no armor, just men and women with pale skin and those unnerving, nebular eyes. They carried crates hovering on grav suspenders, crates that hummed with the song of the singularity. Captain Thorne led them. In person, the aura of wrongness was even stronger. Felt heavy to look at, as if his mass was greater than his volume. When he stopped in front of Vrax, the High Counselor felt a wave of cold radiate from the human, the chill of the deep void. "High Counselor," Thorne bowed slightly, "thank you for receiving us." "You have caused quite a stir, Captain," Vrax replied, struggling to maintain his diplomatic mask. "My scientists are currently debating whether you are technically alive or a localized quantum probability." "A little of both," Thorne admitted. "We exist because we choose to. That is the first lesson of the void. Will supersedes matter." They moved to the Great Hall, a vast circular room designed for interspecies discourse. The humans took their seats on one side, the hegemony on the other. The tension was palpable. The alien counselors stared at the humans with a mix of awe and revulsion. These creatures had touched the forbidden. They were tainted. "Let us dispense with pleasantries," Vrax began, activating the recording nodes. "You claim to possess technology that reverses entropy. You claim to have seen a threat in the void. The hegemony demands proof. We cannot append our understanding of physics based on the word of a species that has been missing for a generation." Thorne nodded to one of his crew, a woman named Alara. She stood and approached the center of the room. She held a small device, no larger than an apple. She placed it on the table. "This is a demonstration," Alara said. Her voice was like wind chimes in a storm. "Do you have an object that is decayed, broken, useless?" One of the skeptic scientists, a cynical crustacean named Yull, slid a canister forward. "This contains a sample of isotope 99. It is decayed to lead an inert gas. It is dead matter. It cannot be reactivated without a particle accelerator the size of a moon." Alara placed her hand over the device. The golden light flared. A hum filled the room, a sound that made teeth ache. The air around the canister shimmered, distorting. Time seemed to twist. The sensation was nauseating, a feeling of vertigo as if the universe was spinning backward. Then silence. Yull reached for the canister with a trembling claw. He scanned it with his handheld reader. He dropped the reader. "Active," he gasped. "It is isotope 99, fresh, potent, the decay chain." It ran backward. The lead became gold, the gold became. "This is impossible. You have violated causality." "We bypassed it," Alara corrected gently, sitting back down. "Energy is never lost, merely dispersed. We call it back home." The room erupted. Arguments, shouts, accusations of trickery. Vrax slammed his claw on the table, demanding order. When the noise subsided, he looked at Thorne with new eyes. This was not just a weapon, this was infinite resources. No more wars for fuel, no more dying suns. "If you give us this," Vrax said slowly, "you make us gods. What is the price, Thorne?" "What is the catch?" "The catch," Thorne said, his face hardening, "is that the light draws the moths, and the moths in the void are the size of galaxies." He activated the central hologram. It showed the galaxy. Then it zoomed out, show the halo of dark matter surrounding the spiral arms. "We call them the asterisk entropic weavers asterisk," Thorne said. "They are entities composed of pure decay. They feed on order, they feed on structure. For eons they have been sleeping because the energy density of the universe was too high for them to manifest fully. But as the universe cools, as entropy increases, they are waking up. They live in the gaps where physics breaks down. The Tartarus expanse, that's not a natural phenomenon. That's a nest." The hologram zoomed into the red zone of the expanse. It showed the gravitational shears. But under Thorne's manipulation, the image shifted. The shears weren't random, they were breathing. "They sensed us when we activated the singularity drive 20 years ago," Thorne continued. "That's why we were pulled in. They thought we were food. We fought them, not with guns. Guns don't work on shadows. We fought them by changing ourselves, by becoming incompatible with their digestion. We learned to inverse their entropy. It burns them. It is the only thing that hurts them." "And they are coming here?" Vrax asked, the skepticism draining away, replaced by a primal dread. "They are already here," Thorne said. "They are the silence in your communication arrays. They are the errors in your navigation computers. They are the bad luck that causes a reactor to fail. They are scouting, testing. And when they realize you are ripe, they will consume this galaxy star by star, turning it into a gray, cold soup." Thorne stood up, leaning over the table. "We brought the entropy sinks not to make you rich, but to make you poisonous. If you install these drives in your fleets, if you lace your planetary shields with this energy, you become inedible. You become painful to touch. We are offering you an inoculation against the end of the world." The High Synod sat in stunned silence. The scale of the revelation was too large to process immediately. They were politicians used to trade disputes and border skirmishes. They were being told that the darkness between the stars was alive and hungry. "Why should we trust you?" a sub-minister whispered. "You are changed, you are." Void touched. "Perhaps you are their heralds." Thorn laughed, a dry, rasping sound. "If we were their heralds, you would already be dust. We are the survivors. We are the ones who looked into the abyss and didn't blink. We are humanity, evolved by necessity. We are the shield." The weeks that followed were a frenzy of activity that reshaped the hegemony. The skepticism was still there, but the fear was greater. The scientists took the entropy sinks apart under human supervision and found the tech worked exactly as described. It was terrifyingly elegant. Factories were retooled. Shipyards began retrofitting the fleets. The Prometheus sat at the center of it all, a dark monolith teaching the children of the light how to survive the dark. But the climax of the transition came not in a laboratory, but in the council chamber during the final ratification of the alliance. The debate had been raging for hours. There were still those who believed the humans were a Trojan horse. High Counselor Vrax was tired. He felt the weight of his years. He looked at Thorn, who sat with that eternal, statuesque patience. Suddenly the lights died. Not a power failure. The darkness was absolute. The emergency lights did not trigger. The bioluminescence of the Zolophian carapaces dimmed and vanished. It was a supernatural darkness, thick and oily. The temperature plummeted. Breath misted in the air. A sound began, a scratching, skittering noise like a billion insects moving inside the walls. It was the sound of the void. "They are here," Thorn's voice cut through the dark, calm and authoritative. "They found the asterisk Prometheus asterisk. They followed us." Panic erupted. Counselors screamed. Psionic flashes of terror lit up the room in chaotic bursts. "Quiet!" Thorn roared, a sound that carried a psionic weight of its own, slamming the aliens into silence. "Do not feed them your fear. That is the appetizer." "What is happening?" Vrax shouted into the dark. "An incursion," Thorn said. "A Weaver's scout. It is trying to breach the reality of this station. It wants the sinks." A tear appeared in the center of the room, a rip in the air that bled pure shadow. Tendrils of smoke lashed out, grasping, freezing whatever they touched. A guard fired his weapon. The energy bolt hit the smoke and simply vanished, its energy consumed. "Conventional weapons are useless," Thorn shouted. "Crew of the Prometheus asterisk, assume formation." The human monks moved. In the darkness, they began to glow, not with light, but with the gold inversion energy. They formed a circle around the tier. They didn't attack, they simply stood, they focused. Thorn stepped into the center, directly in front of the writhing shadow. He raised his hand, the air around him warped. "We deny you," Thorn spoke, his voice echoing with the harmonics of the singularity. "This reality is anchored, this matter is claimed, returned to the silence." He thrust his hand forward. A beam of golden light, pure and concentrated, erupted from his palm. It hit the shadow. The reaction was violent. The shadow shrieked, a sound not of air but of tearing metal. The darkness boiled. Where the gold light touched the shadow didn't just burn, it became asterisk. The smoke turned into steam. The void matter turned into iron filings. The entity was being forced into a physical form, stripped of its chaotic invulnerability. "Now," Thorn signaled. The other humans joined in, a lattice of golden energy pinning the entity. It writhed, solidifying into a horrific, multi-limbed shape trapped in physical reality. "Vrax!" Thorn yelled. "It's material now, kill it!" Vrax didn't hesitate. He grabbed the plasma rifle from a fallen guard. He aimed at the creature that was now flesh and bone, no longer a ghost. He fired. The plasma bolt struck. This time it burned. The creature screeched and exploded in a shower of rapidly decaying matter. The tier in the air slammed shut. The lights flickered back on. The room was a wreck. Counselors were cowering. But in the center, the humans stood, their glow fading, looking tired but unharmed. Thorn looked at Vrax. "That was a scout, a finger of the hand. Do you believe us now?" Vrax looked at the smoking remains of the creature. A thing that shouldn't exist, killed by a weapon that shouldn't work, wielded by a species that should be dead. He slowly holstered the rifle. He looked at the Synod who were rising from the floor, their arrogance shattered, their reality forever altered. "We believe," Vrax said, bowing low, a gesture reserved for emperors. "Teach us, Captain, teach us how to walk in the dark." The ending of the story wasn't a victory parade, it was a mobilization. The hegemony, once a stagnant empire of bureaucrats, transformed into a fortress. The technology of the asterisk Prometheus spread like wildfire. Ships were armored in entropy-eating alloys. Soldiers were trained in the mental discipline required to deny the Weavers. Humanity, the vanished children, had returned not as conquerors, but as the elder siblings who had seen the wolves in the forest. They didn't lead the hegemony, they permeated it. They became the advisors, the engineers, the silent guardians on the bridge of every capital ship. Thorne stood on the observation deck of the Eye of Eternity asterisk, watching the newly refitted fleet assemble. The ships gleamed with the new black and gold livery. They looked dangerous. They looked ready. Vrax joined him. The alien counselor had molted early from the stress, his new shell darker, harder. "The sensors are picking up movement in the Tartarus expanse," Vrax said quietly. "Massive movement. They are coming in force." Thorne nodded. "Let them come. They expect a harvest. They expect sheep." He looked at his reflection in the glass, the ancient eyes, the face that had stared down the end of time. "They're going to find out," Thorne said, a grim smile touching his lips, "that this galaxy has teeth." The camera pulled back through the window, past the station, past the fleet, drifting out into the vast, beautiful, terrifying starfield. The silence of space was no longer empty. It was filled with the hum of engines, the charging of weapons, and the defiance of a united galaxy standing against the night. And somewhere in the dark, the Weavers paused, tasting something they had never tasted before: resistance. The UNS Prometheus burned its engines, a golden torch in the black, leading the charge into the unknown. Narrative ends. Note: the above text is a highly compressed narrative summary designed to emulate the cinematic feel within the constraints of a single output. To truly reach 11,000 words, this story would need to be serialized over approximately 5-6 consecutive prompts, allowing for full scene-by-scene dialogue expansion, minute descriptions of technology, and extended political debate scenes, which are summarized here for impact and completion.